All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 411 Ground and Pound MMA podcast. We are your weekly look into the wide, wacky, wonderful world of mixed martial arts. My name is Robert Winfrey, and I am your host, per usual. Thank you all very much for tuning in. It means a lot that there's anyone out there listening to my rambling, so thank you. Uh, Again, I really appreciate it. On the agenda today, we had a lot of news because, predictably, once the fight between Jack Della Maddalena and Bilal Muhammad was over, suddenly we could get a bevy of fight announcements out of this. So, yeah, that's a thing. So we'll talk about that. We'll review UFC on ESPN Plus 114, which happened last night and was all right. Can't say it was great. It was all right. And again, some other little bits of news here and there. Couple of things worth talking about this week, in addition to the fight announcements, because, those are always fun to talk about. So, that's what we will be hitting today. Anything you can do to help the product is always appreciated. Like, comment, subscribe, star rating, written review. Y'all know the drill there. So any of that's helpful and always appreciated. But with that out of the way, let's jump into this, shall we? So UFC on ESPN Plus 114. They were back in the warehouse. How did we do? We did okay on predictions. Let's see. 8-3. The only man, I almost a couple of things. I really should have gone the other way on Yusuf and Santos. The time off, the move up in weight, I should have known better. That one I really probably should have known better on. But I didn't. I did swap on Pennington and Pinero, not for any particular reason. We just got towards it, and I just went, I don't have a great feeling about this one way or the other. I will switch to go with the odds just for the heck of it. So Pennington, yeah. Let's see. Any others I got wrong that I'm annoyed at? Little bit the green. Well, Gordon, I should have got Jared Gordon. I should have got Jared Gordon and Moises right. I really should have. I probably should have got Gabe Green right, knowing he was cutting down. I mean, I still would have been sweating the heck out of that one, but so ultimately 8-3. I didn't do this last time. I normally try to do this when it happens, but I will do some math on this live. So that's 50 losses and 147 plus 8 is 155. What's 154? Yeah. Okay, so we're 155 and 50, 1 and 1. There was a fizzled fight from this card, the fight between Bellato and Craig. Some kind of last-minute medical issue with Bellato. Unfortunate. This card, man, look, there were some finishes on it, and I know, and that makes people go, yay. Doesn't make me unhappy, but I am not swayed by the luster of shiny. We had a shiny finish. Like, yeah, I don't care that much. How was the fight in its entirety? Like, there's plenty of other things to think about there. So I'm not complaining about it, but man, this card, it kind of limped across the finish line in some respects. In others, frankly, in some respects, it did over-deliver. I'll give them the credit there because we got some finishes, some of which are good, some of which are, oy, some of which are a little bit on the more funny side. But that's where we are prediction-wise for the year, so thumbs up on that to me. I'm still doing okay. Would have liked this one to be a little bit wider, but what are you going to do? All right. Main event, Michael Morales TKO's Gilbert Burns, 339 of the first. I said before, when we previewed this, that I thought the odds were a little bit wide. Turns out, they kind of had it right. Morales did briefly get taken down here. He hasn't, but Burns never got to a control position, which is really surprising. He's pretty good about finding something in those scrambles, but he couldn't secure anything. And Morales got up, got into the clinch. Morales' reach. He had 8 inches of reach advantage on Burns. He's got 79 inches of reach at welterweight. I don't think that's the longest reach in the division, but it's up there. He is wiry, he is lanky, and he's got power, and he's got good eyes. He's really, really good about seeing the openings. He's not just throwing rehearsed combinations. You do some, everybody does, but you can tell fighters that are only doing that. Apologize for phrasing it this way, but there's a lot of, especially like mid-level women's fights that do this, where you kind of come together and I know my 3-punch combination, and then we back off and then we do it again, and some of those like mid-ish level women's MMA fights look like they both look like they're trying to hit pads, right down to the cadence. And it's very rehearsed. Everybody goes through this phase, by the way. I bring that up because it's more likely you've seen women's fights that do this than you've seen a lot of men's fights that do this. Especially if you watch, again, UFC stuff. It's not quite as prevalent amongst men in the UFC at this point. It used to be. Let's not pretend otherwise. But point being, Morales isn't just going through a preset combination. He's finding openings, lining up targets. He's still young. He's only, 25, I think? Yeah. He's only 25. Got power, good eyes, range, knows how to use it, good finishing instinct, really strong hips. This is the first time he was sort of taken down here, and Burns established, as I mentioned, like nothing off of it. That's a heck of a thing to pull off. And really just good work out of Morales, who I don't know exactly what's next for him, but, welterweight needs to be said. Lightweight had this moment last year, call it the last 18 months to 2 years, where you had this kind of rising group of fighters in the division, guys like Benoit Saint-Denis, Rafael Fiziev, Arman Tsarukyan to an extent. You had these guys who were younger making their way up through the ranks, and then, as you always do, you wind up fighting guys near the top, because this is where we're trying to figure things out. And what happened was they all lost. Rafael Fiziev couldn't get by Justin Gaethje. Tsarukyan kind of bucked this trend a little bit, but BSD couldn't get by Poirier. Poirier turned back a couple of guys. I mean, Hooker was going to be that guy on the come up at one point, and it was Poirier that turned him back, and maybe the best fight that's ever taken place in the Apex was Hooker-Poirier. If you haven't seen that one, do yourself a favor, look it up. It's great. Guys haven't really been... I mean, again, Tsarukyan got the closest, but, I mean, Paddy Pimblett hasn't beaten any of those old guard. He's kind of looking to. Poirier's about to go out. Holloway's technically ranked at lightweight now, and that's a little bit of a wrinkle. Joel Alvarez is coming up. I mean, Grant Dawson ran into Bobby Green, of all people, and that really halted his rise. Alvarez had the loss to Tsarukyan, but in good sense. Moicano's had a couple of struggles. They just couldn't quite push out. Gamrot ran into some trouble trying to get over the hump. They just couldn't quite push out the old war horses. And welterweight saw that and kind of took it personally. Like, no, we ain't doing this, guys. If you look at the last 2 years over there, let's just bear with me for a second here at welterweight. Guess who hasn't had a win in 2 years at welterweight? Uh, so how did I see this? It used to be the top champion, the top 5 or 6, and now they're all winless. Kamaru Usman, Colby Covington, Stephen Thompson, uh, Gilbert Burns. Add him to that list now with this loss. He's been on a bit of a losing streak, as mentioned. You've got the older Tyron Woodley. I mean, he's been out of the UFC for a bit, but he would fit that mold. Just not willing to give up his spot. I don't mean that you're not owed the next generation, you don't have to give it up. I'm not talking about this in the pro wrestling sense where someone's politicking around it. I mean this in the sense that, you want that guy's spot. This is a competitive sport. You go take it from him. And now, again, the younger guys, Jack Della Maddalena, Bilal Muhammad, he's not young, but Sean Brady, Shavkat Rakhmonov, Ian Gary, Joaquin Buckley. They looked at the Neil Magnies, the Jeff Neals, again, the Stephen Thompsons, the Gilbert Burns, those guys who were around the top of the division, deservedly so, mind you, and just said, we're not doing what lightweight's doing. And they've kind of been pushing those guys down. Somehow Kamaru Usman still ranked number 5 at welterweight. That's how they do those. I don't think the direction the UFC is going is the correct direction to try and fix the problem they have, but pretending that they don't have a problem is foolish. They clearly have a problem when it comes to the rankings and whatnot. But again, the point, the younger guys at welterweight pushed out the older guys, which is what you have to do if you want to do that. You can't just, they're not going to give it to you. You got to take it from them. And welterweight's in a really good spot right now. You've got Buckley coming up. You've got Gary. You got Buckley and Usman. That's probably going to further this trend. Edwards just got beat pretty badly by Brady. Shavkat's still there as not quite the boogeyman he used to be, and JDM claiming the belt was, I mean, I'm not going to say bizarrely shocking or anything. I think most of us gave him a respectable chance. And in point of fact, I mentioned this, if you didn't tell me who won anything, but just told me a couple of things about how Bilal both chose to fight and was forced to fight, there's a little both going on there, and I went on about that last week. Then who do I think would have won given those circumstances? I would have said JDM. The conditions under which that fight was contested very much favored him, partially because of some decisions Bilal made. A lot of stuff JDM was doing that made him put him in bad positions, but we have been over that already. I don't want to rehash it. Just pointing out, welterweight in a good spot, in a really good spot. It's almost quietly become one of the better divisions. I don't know that it's in a healthier spot than lightweight, and I'll go into that in a minute. Lightweight is still very stacked, has a bunch of action heroes. But, is lightweight going to be as good now in a year? That's a bit of an open question from where I sit. But welterweight does not have that problem. Welterweight's having the normal turnover going on. So, good on Morales. Gotta wait to see a couple of other fights before we can really get a handle on what's next for him, but he's probably going to take at least the 8th spot. I would assume minimum he's going to take the 8th spot. He's a problem for that division. There's still questions around him in some respects. Still don't know what his cardio looks like if things have to really go. Um, he's fought off wrestlers, but um, I don't think we've seen him fight with someone who's really just comfortable striking with him. And with a lot of these like really kind of killer strikers, frequently what they do is feast on people who are not as comfortable striking as they are. So let me double check that, because I mean Neil Magny wasn't never going to strike with him. Jake Matthews did a little bit. So again, when I say we're a little bit unsure about his cardio, he's gone 3 rounds a couple of times in the past. But going 3 rounds with Max Griffin or even Jake Matthews, not quite the same as like 3 hard rounds. With someone who's really trying to shut you down. He's got good fence wrestling. Would be curious to see what he does in open space, but again, somebody's got to put him there. And the fact that he's as young as he is, he is a problem for that weight class. That might change in the future. Everyone's a problem until they get figured out, but at the moment, he's definitely a problem, and he needs to be given respect as far as that goes. So, yeah, that was your main event. Good main event. I mean, not good for Gilbert Burns, who I feel bad for Burns. The number of people coming out in the aftermath of this going, man, how bad is Khamzat Chimaev? Because he went 3 rounds with Burns and probably should have lost that fight. I scored it for Burns personally. But let's be fair that fight did a lot to take stuff out of Burns. He's 38 now. And yeah, I hate to say that he's washed because, Gilbert Burns is kind of awesome. But he's 38. He's been doing this for a while. And he's had a few wars. He needs to be planning his exit strategy at this point. I don't think he has too much longer doing this. Certainly at this level, he doesn't have too much longer doing this. All right, but I wish Gilbert nothing but good things. He seems to be one of the good guys of the sport. Co-main event: Myron Santos defeated Sadiq Youssef via unanimous decision, 129-28, 230-27s. Youssef just never got going here. Santos did a pretty good job keeping him at range. Both guys normally fight at featherweight. I don't know why this was at lightweight. I think Santos might be making a serious move up here. Youssef just looked gun-shy. Just never got going. A lot of clinching. A lot of clinching from Youssef, which is a little bit odd for him. Nursultan Rozboyev defeated Dustin Stoltzfus via unanimous decision. 229-28 and a 30-27. This was a fun little fight. Stoltzfus had a couple of decent submission threats that were pretty good. He just stood up to a lot of abuse. Rozboyev down the stretch stops throwing in combination, and that's going to be a problem for him. The more he ascends in competition level, he's got to be able to maintain a degree of offensive consistency over the course of a full fight. When he starts to get a little bit tired, he starts doing one and done instead of combination work. And especially once your power goes a little bit, when you start to fatigue, that's not a happy recipe. But this was a solid enough win for him, and Stoltzfus didn't look bad. You never like coming away from a fight going, man, the biggest thing I took away was his toughness, because that's not the biggest thing that. But his toughness was on display here for sure. Melquiades Alcosta defeated Julian Erosa via unanimous decision, 29-28 across the board. This was your fight of the night. This deserved it. This was a fun little brawl. Erosa just dogged this one out, man. He got hit a lot early. He got rocked in the first round. But Costa does a lot of moving, and there's a fairly high energy component to a lot of what he does. And he fades in the third round. He faded in this one, and Erosa started putting it on him a little bit. Costa cut one of his toes pretty badly, actually. You can find pics of it if you're interested. Don't know when that happened, but he clearly cut it. I mean, there was blood coming out of his foot. I think we noticed it between rounds 1 and 2, so it happened in the first round. But Costa's a pretty interesting guy at featherweight. He's got to hammer out those cardio issues, whether that's a more reasonable apportionment of energy early or something similar, but you can't keep giving away the third round like this. That's gonna come back to bite you. It just is. Erosa didn't look bad. Like I said, this was your fight of the night, and both guys deserved it. Both guys went to the hospital afterwards, which good, like you should if you need it. But yeah, good fight here. Look this one up if you missed it. On the prelims, Gabriel Green defeated Mateus Camilo via rear naked choke, 3:43 of the second. Tough first round for Green. He just really struggles to get his offense going. He's at lightweight now. He had been at welterweight before. Looks big for lightweight, not huge, huge, but he was an undersized welterweight, and that showed here. He's got to find a way to get things into gear faster because he gave away the first, had very, very low output. Second round, he nearly gets choked out with a triangle, but to his credit, slams Camilo, and Camilo tries to switch to the armbar, which that's a way to try and get out of a triangle armbar. Frequently what it does, it won't break you out of the hold, but it will give them something else to think about, and rather than get slammed again, they'll instead reach and try to wrap the leg to prevent that and turn the angle on the choke. You can still kind of try to fight for both, but you really need two hands to do the triangle armbar, and if one's wrapping a leg to, again, stop you from being elevated and to kind of clamp things down more, you can't really go for the armbar at the same time. So then he was able to just find a little bit of an angle because Camilo didn't actually wrap his legs even after he got slammed. He started pulling down on the head, which is not a bad finishing technique to a triangle choke. I'm certainly not going to pretend that it's not bad. So please don't misunderstand me here. I'm just talking about what happened. But because he didn't kind of wrap the leg, Green's able to angle his body a little bit and kind of start squeezing his head out. Gets out, and then the fight kind of goes out of Camilo after he fails that. Green gets his back, gets the choke. That's all she wrote there. Jared Gordon knocked out Thiago Moises, 3:37 of the first. Jared Gordon looked real good for as long as this lasted. Took down Moises pretty quickly, decent ground and pound, and then just countered a left hook. You could throw the lead left hook if you want, but you've got to set it up. You don't have to set it up with punches necessarily, but at least fakes, feints, stuff like that. He didn't. He just threw it and got countered with a right hand that put him down and out. Moises might be a little bit washed. He's taken a fair amount of damage. That's the reason I think I should have got this one right. Moises doesn't react well to taking a lot of physical abuse. And Gordon is pretty good at dishing it out. So, good win for Jared Gordon. He's had some decisions that should have gone his way that didn't. Curious what he does next. He's a really good fighter for, TV fights, and I don't say that pejoratively. He's unlikely to get towards the belt for any number of reasons, but I'm never sad to see Jared Gordon on a fight card, ever. Never sad to see that. Let's see. At featherweight next, Yadier Delvaye, I think technically, choked out Connor Matthews, 2:54 of the first with a rear naked choke. This was a bit of a showcase for Delvaye. Off-balanced Matthews on a kick, got on top, passed, got the back. Good ground and pound, got the choke. Good debut. Luana Santos, in her bantamweight debut, she'd been at flyweight before this. She submitted Tainara Lisboa at 4:59 of the second round with an Americana/key lock from Mount. I believe that's the first female Americana finish in the UFC. Normally that's reserved for heavyweights, amateurs or just low-level regional stuff. If you're getting tapped with let me be clear, there are some exceptions to that. It's a legitimate technique, but, so's a Peruvian necktie. So's a straight ankle lock. So's a toe hold. People don't tap to that because they think it's funny. But those aren't winning techniques at what should be the UFC level as a general rule. There are exceptions, and Vitor Belfort got tapped out with one of these, but they don't happen a lot in the UFC for good reason, because you shouldn't be giving that up. Strawweight next. Denise Gomes violently knocked out Elise Reed 30 seconds into the second round. Late stoppage here, for the record. Ref could have stopped this earlier than he did. I still don't know what to think about Gomes. She's young, so she's making some improvements. Her defense is really porous, but she actually has a bit of power, so when that comes back at you, and it complicates things a little bit. I don't know exactly what to... I don't have a good handle on her yet. But she's on a decent streak, and power at strawweight is at something of a premium. Flyweight next. Hyun-Sung Park defeated Carlos Hernandez via rear naked choke, 226 of the first. Park just kind of... Lots of pressure from Park. He got Hernandez back to the fence quick. Did a good job of keeping him there. Had some nice body work, some really good knees in the clinch. Hit a bit of a foot sweep, got the back, got the choke. Flyweight could always use, interesting prospects, and he's 10-0 now at this point, I think. He's 9-0 or 10-0. Yeah, good win for Park. Curious to see what he does next. And kicking everything off, Tisha Pennington defeated Luana Pinheiro via unanimous decision, 29-28 across the boards. I actually scored this for Pinheiro, but I'm not up in arms. This was not a very good fight. Commentary later going, yeah, we've had all these finishes, which they did, and the first fight of the night was a really good fight. Like, no, it wasn't. It wasn't the worst fight I've ever seen, but it wasn't that good. It wasn't that. And I'm not going to pretend it was. So, yeah, that was the card. Full report, as always, in the MMA Zone of 411mania.com. Go give that a read if you are so inclined. I always appreciate it. Y'all know the drill there. Okay, let me adjust that. Okay, you can close. There is no preview this week. The UFC taking a week off next week. Not sure why, but they are. So, that means we get to wow, I got through that fast. Model of efficiency I am this time around. Good grief, I don't usually do that quickly. All right, so let's get to some of the news. So, the big news in the wake of JDM becoming the champion at UFC 315, we now have stuff announced. So, UFC 317 and UFC 319 got fights announced. 319 will be in Chicago. It's going to be for the main event for the middleweight title. Dricus du Plessis defending against Khamzat Chimaev. Curious how Chimaev's going to get into the country because, association with Chechen warlords, but I don't know. That's just where we are. We'll see. It would not be the first time the UFC announced something like this and then ignored visa issues on the part of one of the fighters until something bad happens. They have a history of doing that too, so again, we're not going to pretend otherwise. Yeah. No, nothing else really announced for that card, but that's a good main event. I'm interested in that fight. I'm leaning du Plessis, if I'm being honest. Not by a lot. In fact, the odds officially have opened leaning towards Khamzat, which I don't think is unfair. No one's had anything really to offer Khamzat apart from Burns briefly. Burns should have won that fight, I think, but, Khamzat just, the long time off, some of the, quick returns. The man just ran through Robert Whittaker like it was nothing. So he's clearly good. But if you can actually like counter wrestle him, I don't know how the rest of his game holds up. And DDP is pretty good about stuff like that. So I'm leaning Du Plessis. Part of that's wish fulfillment on my end. Like I don't like Khamzat, but I mean that's nothing personal to him. He's just a fighter. The official backup for this is Nasruddin Imavov. So Du Plessis, of course, took to X and went, "Guess I'm fighting Imavov because poking the bear." I talking about this with one of my brothers. Like DDP has a knack for finding something that will actually get under his opponent's skin. Little bit of an evil genius like that. I mean, look, everybody can sling insults, and most people do in MMA. But something about I don't know what he's got to have, again, just kind of a knack for it, like some instinct for I could push any number of buttons. Don't know what ones will work, but but he finds the one that really messes with you. I mean, he threw off Sean Strickland. He got Izzy crying. I don't even say that to be like pejorative to Izzy at all. But he made him cry at a press conference. That is a statement of fact, not a moral judgment. He's just got so if he's going to point to like the unreliability of Khamzat, maybe he thinks that's what'll actually get a reaction out of him. That's a good fight. The big news, UFC 317 International Fight Week finally has its main event. For the vacant lightweight title, Ilia Topuria and Charles Oliveira. So Makhachev is relinquishing the lightweight belt, and he is moving up to welterweight, and they announced at some future date he'll fight Jack Della Maddalena. Couple of things about this. Can we take a moment and talk about like the fractured history of lightweight recently? The last time we had legitimate like transfer of that belt was when Conor beat Eddie Alvarez. Now, bear with me for just a second. There's one you could argue, and I'll get to that in a minute, but Conor beats Eddie Alvarez, and then what? He's stripped of it. Khabib wins it by beating Al Iaquinta. He then beats Conor after that. Like, I'm not here to hate on Khabib. He brought some stability and a little bit of excitement to that division. Like, much respect to the career of Khabib Nurmagomedov. So, no shade there. But then he retires and vacates. So the belt is not handed off to the next guy the way you'd want. And Khabib didn't get it. Now, Khabib, it helps that he beat the guy who was the champion before, but it just needs to be said. Khabib handed the belt back. Then Charles Oliveira gets it, and he loses it on the scale. This is somewhat mitigated, again, by Makhachev beating Oliveira for the vacant belt. Because that was the guy who did have it, and there's bits of dispute you can have about how the weigh-ins were handled. I'm not here to rehash that. But fact of the matter is Makhachev won a vacant belt. Beat the guy who used to have it, helps a little bit. Now he's just handing it back. There's not been a straight transfer of power of that belt in a while. And now we're getting more of that. It's not healthy for the division. It's just not. So point being, like JDM against Makhachev, I don't know. I go back and forth on that one a little bit. I got to put some serious thought into it before the fight rolls around. A lot of the fence work that JDM did to stifle Bilal worked really good at stifling Bilal. It would not work as good against Makhachev because Makhachev fence wrestles very differently than Bilal. Now, I'm sure he knows that. I'm sure Craig Jones knows that. I'm sure they'll work on stuff. But if you saw the way he shut down a lot of Bilal's fence wrestling and went, oh, he'll have equal success against Makhachev, they do that very differently. So that's not 1-to-1, is my point there. But we'll see when that rolls around. As for, again, Topuria and Oliveira, I heavily favor Topuria there. Look, mad respect to Charles Oliveira. Seriously. He's been doing this for a long time. And his late career, when I say like he had a late career resurgence to the belt, I mean, he was like, what, double-digit fights into his UFC career before he did that? He was there. It was a lot. It was a lot. And then he just kind of like got everything to click. But his defense is still iffy. And we've seen Topuria knock people out at lightweight before. More importantly than his power is his technique. Like, Topuria's delivery, he has very good power to begin with. The fact that his delivery system is superb is what makes it lethal. Like, there's guys who just hit really, really hard, but if their delivery system can't cut it, then it's not all that useful. His delivery system is excellent. And I think Oliveira is going to be in for a rough night, but we'll find out when the fight actually happens. But in the wake of this, heat started brewing up between Topuria and Makhachev, because I assume Ali Abdelaziz got onto Makhachev's Twitter and decided to start feeding into this, because very little of what was sent out by during that stretch of time actually sounds like Makhachev. But him doing that, no, because Topuria called him a bit of a hypocrite. He told me I needed to win at least one fight at lightweight before I could potentially get a title shot, and now he's skipping the lineup at welterweight, which is stacked. Little bit of hypocrisy, true. And then I'm going to assume Ali, so if I say that, just know that's where I'm going, to come out and go, the difference between you and me is I cleaned out my division, and everyone dunked on that. Deservedly so. Look, I respect Makhachev's reign. I really do. I like Islam. He seems like a fun guy. He's a really excellent fighter. Excellent fighter. Pound for pound number one. Deserves to be. But half of his title defenses are short notice replacements. His first one against Volkanovski. You know what? Pound for pound number one and number two at the time. I will say nothing bad about that fight. I will say nothing bad about him getting that win. I'm not one of those guys who's going to say, but three of his defenses are against featherweights. Like, shut up. Dustin Poirier used to be a featherweight. Yeah. What, 10 years ago? More? He hasn't been a featherweight since you came in to watch this sport. You looked that up. That's all you did. No. Stop that. Bad. Bad person online. No. Dustin Poirier's been a lightweight for a long time. Leave that alone. But the second Volk fight being on like a week's notice. Sorry, there's an asterisk there. Yeah, he got a good knockout. Big thumbs up. Like, I can't hate on the guy for winning the fight in front of him, and I'm not going to. That doesn't mean I can't say you fought a guy on really short notice who was like almost coming off the couch. That's not the same. And then you beat Moicano on, again, like a week's notice when he filled in for Saryuki. And wasn't that like a few days' notice? And not Makhachev's fault. Not accusing him of avoiding any challenger. Not accusing him of any of that. Of hand-selecting opponents. No, none of it. Not saying anything bad about that. This was not his fault. But to claim you cleaned out the division when you had one win over a ranked lightweight as champion is utter crap. That's all it is. It is utter crap. You didn't clean out that division. You would have fought Arman. I think you would have beat him. Be very clear about that. but you didn't fight him. Somebody went through this. Like, you want to know how many like top guys he actually has wins over? He beat Charles to win the belt, and then he beat Poirier. But that's it. Like, neither he nor Arman were ranked when they fought the first time, so you can't say that that win doesn't carry over that way. Didn't fight Gaethje, didn't fight Holloway, didn't fight Hooker, didn't fight Gamrot. Like, you didn't fight the top of that division. You fought a pound-for-pound great and an all-time great in Alexander Volkanovski twice, once on short notice. Then you fought Then you fought Dustin Poirier. Fair enough, got a good win. Then you fought Moicano on short notice. Cleaned out what, buddy? You did as good a job cleaning out that division as one of my brothers does with his room. Which is to say, there's a path you can walk through. You didn't do what you're claiming to do, and everybody dunked on it as they should have. It's a stupid point. It's a really stupid point. But Ali just says what he says, so not much more can be done about that. But I'm not going to complain about Topuria and Oliveira. It's a good fight. There was some hints that Makhachev might try to go back down if he beats JDM and then reclaim the lightweight belt. I find that unlikely. If a big consideration for him is the weight cut, and it is a big consideration for him, by the way, why would you do that again? Like, for enough money, maybe, but I don't know that fight happens at this point, because Topuria should not move up to welterweight. If somebody mentioned this, if he knocks out Charles Oliveira, like, that will be some heinous villain stuff that he has done. Respectfully. People love Volk, he knocked him out. People love Max, he knocked him out. People like Charles Oliveira. If he knocks him out too, this guy can't catch a break. He can't fight someone that the crowd doesn't like. He's just knocking out everyone's favorite fighter. And if you do that enough, you do kind of become someone's favorite fighter. But that guy just can't get booked as the face to save his life. He is just out there murking everyone's favorite fighter. But that's a good fight. There are a few other fights that got announced this last week. Let me go through these fairly quickly. So, point being there, we know that Makhachev is going to be next for JDM. Fine. We know what's up for 317. I didn't have this as a separate news item because I thought I'd be able to talk about it, but let me talk about it here because I'm just talking about some fights that have been announced recently. The big one that kind of caught a few people off guard for UFC 316, former Bellator bantamweight champion Patchy Mix is making the jump to the UFC. He finally got out of his PFL deal, and he will fight Mario Bautista at UFC 316. I previously mentioned that. Bit of a short notice thing for both guys. I'm glad to see Patchy Mix in the UFC. He's really good. The fact that he couldn't seem to buy a fight for love or money under the PFL banner is damning of that organization in ways that I struggle to put into words. Bautista's a really tough opener. He's nobody's easy fight, but don't sleep on Patchy Mix there. He definitely might have something for that. What's the other one that got made? Let me see. I swear they announced... I swear they announced Tatsuro Taira in another main event, which I'm not opposed to. Let's see if that hasn't been updated or not. Let me find my source on that, because if I'm misremembering the news, then I will be quiet about it. but I could have sworn. Oh, minor bit of news while I'm looking for this one. Yeah, the UFC is put in for like, hey, we're gonna be at the Vegas. We're gonna be at the Apex again a little bit, which why is the UFC? The UFC really went out of their way to champion. We were the first ones back with, you know, full fight cards with full not fight cards with full crowds, and they were. Um, you could argue inadvisably so, but uh, you know, I again you could argue inadvisably so. Not sure how much I'd agree with that, but I am not here to try and rehash any of that debate. So, but to now, like years on, still be holding warehouse fights because it reduces your overhead is penny pinching to the nth degree. Okay, yeah, here it is. Okay, August 2nd. Yeah, Tetsudo Taira versus Amir Albazi will main event. They'll be in the Apex. That's a fine fight night main event. Not going to complain about it. Curious to see how Taira rebounds after that because he had a really tough fight his last time out when he fought Brandon Royval. He's got to fix his defense, man. You can't eat that many strikes. But he and Albazi will probably do a lot of grappling. It's a bit more what Albazi does. Anyway, that's a good fight. Yeah, I think that's kind of the fight news that we got this last week. So we will leave that where that is. And okay, I have a minor bit of news here. We do have an update on Davison Figueiredo. He put out a statement about his injury. What he has is a torn anterolateral ligament, which is not the worst ligament to tear in your knee. It's not, you never want to tear anything in your knee. That always sucks. That's always bad. But this is not as bad as an ACL tear, certainly not as bad as a PCL tear, which is really hard to do actually, but if you've never known someone that has torn that is a nightmare. So of all the ligaments to tear, this is one of the more manageable ones. The statement indicated that he's not going to require surgery, so if it's not a full tear, then okay, proper rehab might be able to fix it. If it is a full tear, he's going to try and power through anyway, yeesh, because the ALL does some knee stabilization, and if it's not there, you run a much higher risk of tearing the ACL in particular. They kind of work in concert. Usually when you tear one, usually when you tear your ACL, your ALL kind of goes along for the ride. So, again, got to see specifically how that might play out, but good on him. Since this doesn't seem like it'll keep him out for, a year plus, I still don't like his chances of really attaining gold, but that would have been like a full MCL, ACL, serious tear. Might have been the end of him in a very real way. So this seems to be not quite that serious. So wishing him the best in recovery and all that jazz. All right. That's all I've got That's all I've got written down. Looking at an L word there when I started that sentence. So let me check the social media, see if anything crazy is dropped. If not, we will do plugs and get out of here. Okay. Nope. Nothing new there. So plugs. Monday, over on Damn You Hollywood, we will be reviewing Final Destination Bloodlines, the last entry of the franchise to feature the late, great Tony Todd. That'll be me. Mark will be there. I think Alexis is going to be there. Let me check. No, she's not listed there. Who is listed? Zach and Mick are both listed, so okay. That'll be a good time. So tune in for that. Regular coverage, WWE SmackDown on Friday, no UFC event on Saturday. Next Sunday, before I record this podcast, I will be covering AEW's Double or Nothing. Sure. That'll be a thing. I will be covering that, so if you're interested in any of that, stop by, say hello. You'll know where you can find me when it comes to stuff like that. I appreciate it. I think that's it for me for this week. So, thank you all very much again. I appreciate you. Stay safe out there, and until next time, continue to be well, be safe, and behave.